today we have Terry Wragg from the Leeds Animation Workshop, first film, Lisa Fingleton from Waiting for You, and we have Jane Thornton and Joy Elias-Rilwan, apologies for my pronunciation. Thorburn. Okay. From the final film that we've just seen now. So we're very happy to welcome you all here today. Maybe we could start perhaps with, because it's the last film in the programme we saw, maybe you could talk about how you collaborated with writing the piece and performing it. And
well, it wasn't written and then we set out to make it. We sort of constructed it by filming, basically, and rather than follow a text, we, and then illustrating it with images, we shot the images first, and then Joy wrote some of the text for her own story, and the rest was from news reports and so on, and so it was really constructed as we went along. We built on the imagery, we built on the stories we found, and things went together in a myriad of ways until it seemed to resonate, and that's how we ended up with it. So we shot it over quite a long period of time. Every time both of us were free, we'd go off for an afternoon or a day, and we did it that way. So it was a very back-to-front way of doing it, and hopefully it came up with some imagery that, or we weren't led by the text all the time. So the text is really like a good point of entry for, multi-layered. The intention is that it's multi-layered and the text is the sort of easiest layer. But the imagery speaks for itself as well, and sometimes cuts it or tells a different story, so the audience can interpret it as well.
Yeah. Hello, can you hear me? We wanted to get out of our comfort zone. I'm an actress and Jane's a filmmaker. We're great friends originally. And we wanted to do something about the situation that we picked up on about 3 years ago, which is being picked up now in the media, about Africans floating dead in the Mediterranean, which the Prime Minister of Malta or Italy now calls something that's turned the Mediterranean into the Dead Sea. And the theme of our project was a better life. Why would people risk their life and the lives of people who know them, in terms of they borrow this huge amount of money, and if they die, their families back home still have to pay the people they borrowed it from. For what? To join Europe, which is also sinking in its own economic whatever. And whether they're aware of this or not, I don't know. I just think it's unacceptable now for people not to know that the streets of Europe, and in particular where we are, England, are not paved with gold, and money does not grow on trees, and love does not fall out of, etc. But if Africans sort of sprawled across somebody else's Rolls Royce, in that, this is worth it dying for, then maybe that's why people believe it. Anyway, and I have I've known Nina for some time. She's dead now, of course, and I knew her for about the last 20 years of her life, and she used to call me up, and sometimes I respond and sometimes I won't, in terms of picking up the phone or going to visit her. She's quite obsessive about it, and so in the end I had this bag of tapes, because in those days, I knew it from the 90s, you had tapes that you could take out or keep. I told her I have these bag of tapes of yours, and I may throw them away. And she was quite happy for me to do whatever I like, as long. She was quite happy that I told her about the fact that they existed and asked her permission. And so we had this idea of a better life, and people, migrants, exits and entrances, yeah. And we thought, right, in our own way, we will do something about this. And the idea of the symbol of Nina, it's not a film about Nina Simone, but she is important to it in that she's this disembodied voice. But it's that she is supposed to, as far as I know of her, and I'm sure you'll agree, represent through her own trials in the West. And her messages to me are all about me joining her. So I thought that would be a kind of good metaphor whereby the West is pulling these Africans. And of course, we're concentrating on women because I'm playing all the different parts. And I'm an African woman. So, I mean, it could be men, children. But, you know, to use her voice as representing the Western pull and the Western kind of making it figure. Do you follow so far? And so that's why she's there. She does serve a purpose other than, oh, Joy knows Nina, and blah, 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 blah. You know, for me, she's very important in that she was pulling me and thereby pulling in symbolically others like me to be enticed by what, you know, the West has to offer. And, you know, and I'm already here. And others here, you know, who are just outside this cinema. And so what is it that we've got out of this enticement, you know, like, what we lost? I personally feel I lost a lot, because a lot of my life is on that screen. And I've gained a lot too, but whether I was asked to be here at the age of 8 or not, it's irrelevant, but I'm here and have no regrets. But just exploring that whole thing of, you know, the better life. You don't have to be African, you have to come through West. You just have to get out of bed and want something better for yourself. So I think we can all identify with that. And that's all it is really, a bag of tapes, how they can kind of be an umbrella for this story of a better life.
I found it really interesting that during the course of that, even what you just said about Nina and her voice, that she comes across that voice as being quite kind of neurotic because of this obsessiveness that you've spoken about, and seeing your character about ignoring that voice and so on and so forth. You went along. It sort of seems to chime in with a lot of what that ambivalent sort of relationship to the success or whatever, and the neurosis it gives you as well, you know. Sort of.
Well, I mean, she was obsessive because we would all be, if we'd all engineered and be a part of the civil rights movement. And, you know, she had a very troubled life. So, and, you know, she took me on. I'm very grateful. She said, look, this is show business, darling, and you need people to watch your back. As far as I can see, you don't have anybody watching your back. I will elect myself to do that. And I was very grateful.
Was she able to see the film?
No,
she was already dead.
Yeah, she's been dead a few years, and the film was made in the last 3 years.
Okay, I mean, the films are quite different that we've shown this afternoon, so it's kind of hard to draw some similarities between them, but they all deal with, I mean, the Herstories told from a woman's point of view. I mean, the animation workshop piece that we started with was quite, was a wonderful parable for our times, really. And could you say something about where that came from and the process of making it? Yes, please do. I think you switched.
Thank you. Well, I suppose what the link between the three films is that they're all different ways of telling stories. Very, very different ways, but they're all telling our story. And, you know, we went right back to traditional stories in order to tell about women's situation today. And one of our films was here last year at the Feminist Film Festival. It was called Give Us a Smile, that we made in 1983, which was quite a head-on, confrontational, angry film about violence against women and justice for women, and there was a lot of anger and shouting in it, as well as a bit of humour. But 10 years passed, and the world had changed tremendously when we came to make Through the Glass Ceiling. In 1994 it came out. We wanted to make another film about women's situation in the world, but things were so different that we couldn't possibly make another Give Us a Smile, even if we'd wanted to. We couldn't have done something in that way, because in the 10 years since we first started making films, the Equal Pay Act had started to come in, the Sex Discrimination Act had started to come in, and there'd been lots of battles that women had had to fight about or getting all these laws to actually work. There've been strikes by the people at Grunwick, there've been strikes by the Yorkshire Dinner Ladies, there've been strikes by fisherwomen in Hull. There've been all sorts of battles going on, but the laws had changed. We'd managed to, the phrase at the time was to mainstream equal opportunities. To some extent, the process had started. And so we all knew that there was still the gender salary gap and all of those things were still a problem for women, but it had changed so much. And everybody was kind of relaxing, women were kind of relaxing, thinking, oh, we don't have to go on demos every day anymore. we can sit back and let the law do the work. By the time we made Through the Glass Ceiling, there was a women's committee in the Greater London Council, there was women's committees all over England, there was lots of signs that things were changing, and our lives were so completely different from what our mothers' lives had been. And people were starting to say, oh, you know, women's livers, we don't need them anymore, it's the age of post-feminism. And, you know, we tried to put in some of these references in the film where the princess falls into a deep sleep and then the alarm clock wakes her up, because it's arrived at the age of equality, but it's gone past the prehistoric times, and it's gone past the age of post-feminism, or it's not quite got to the age of post-feminism or something. But when we came to think about how to present this, we wanted to tell it as one person's story, and that the thing that we looked back to was the traditional stories, because it was a way of reaching lots of different people. And I was particularly amazed that the furthest I've ever been to show this film was Sicily, to a group of Mediterranean women in Sicily, and most of them didn't speak English, and I thought, how are they going to relate to the film? And they all recognised the stories. They had the same stories. These were, you know, women from North Africa and Malta and all around the Mediterranean countries, and they all knew what we were referring to when they saw the Three Bears and Cinderella and Red Riding Hood. They totally understood it, and they responded in just the same way that the English audiences had. So that was pretty amazing. And then we went on and used traditional stories in several other films as well about feminist issues. There's a whole trilogy about the adventures of Princess Ella, and then there's another one about equality for women in science, engineering and technology, that's called, did I say hairdressing? I meant astrophysics. But they're all a kind of a linked group of fairy stories for today, is what we were planning to do there.
And Lisa, your film is the most directly personal and kind of heartfelt in terms of the direct-to-camera and such a personal story. I mean, it must be quite difficult to show, maybe, and to sit in the audience and watch it. But about making it, did it be made over quite a period of time as well? Or is it kind of watching it, is it more painful?
I suppose we made it's kind of obvious from the footage, I think, that nobody was meant to be seeing it. I was never meant to be sitting here. Like, we made it on, I think, 5 different cameras, little video cameras, iPhones, anything we had. And because I suppose we'd moved to this very, very rural place on the west coast of Ireland, we just thought, it might be tricky being, a child of lesbian parents in this tiny little town, and we thought, should we make a little video for them? And all of the footage, somebody said to me, like, how did you stay so optimistic? And it's, like, constantly knocked down and constantly going. And it's genuinely, even now when I look at the footage, we genuinely believed. I think we both believe we're really lucky people, the two of us, my partner and myself. Like, we're really lucky. Like, we just, anything we really want in life, we feel like we've had it. We've only sipped once maybe, but we just really felt that it was going to happen. So we just kept getting out the phones and going, come on, we'll record this, because this is going to be the day when it's going to happen. And even the final pregnancy test, like, I look at it now and think, what were we thinking that we filmed it? But we were always afraid that the big moment would be missing, and our child would be looking at the film in the future and going, did you not film that? How could you not film the moment where I came into the world? So we always just felt this responsibility. And then enough, we were just heartbroken, and there was loads of other people that came and went, and it was 5 years of constantly wanting to have a baby and putting it on hold. So this time last year, my partner said to me, look, I have enough, I have to do something with my life other than sitting around waiting for a lovely donor to show up. So she went to Cork to do photography, and then she said to me, Aaron, do something for yourself now. So at the last minute, I applied for an MA in documentary here in Goldsmiths in London, and I didn't even want to come. My heart was just like, I was just miserable. And I got to London thinking, well, this is left behind me. I actually forgot that we never actually looked at the footage. So I just had this little file that was marked baby, and I thought, well, I'd never open it again. And then I ended up having surgery last year on my shoulder, so I couldn't film, and I was doing an MA in filmmaking. So I thought, damn it, I have to do something from archive. So it was literally a personal project. I said to my tutor, I said, look, I have these tapes, I've never looked at them, I'm going to bawl for a couple of months if I look at them, but maybe I'll just look at them and make something for us so that we have some healing. And the minute he saw it, he started crying, going, oh my God, I know so many people who want to have babies and they'd love to see this. And when I showed it to my partner then, she had never seen it, and she was like, how could we have filmed inside of the clinic? And what are you doing with your legs in the air? And all this stuff. And I suppose over the years, when you're going through this yourself, people start telling you their own stories, and you start realising that whether you're 20 and you've just had a pregnancy test and you're terrified, or whether you're 50 and you're dying to have a child, I think all of us at some stage go through that, whether we don't want a baby or we want a baby, and our lives are kind of ruled around it. And I just thought, something, maybe there's some value in putting something that's so horrendously personal and difficult to watch on the screen for other people. But as I said, it was absolutely never meant to see the light of day, except for one little baby, or two.
Thanks for sharing it. We'd like to take questions if people have questions on any of the films.
And please do ask questions. Yeah.
Has it been cathartic making that film and watching it and going over it again and again?
I suppose I sat in an edit suite from, last October to June, probably, most days, every day, on my own, looking at the footage, because my partner was in Ireland. And yeah, absolutely. And part of it in the beginning was like I'd never seen it, so I was kind of shocked, and so hugely cathartic. Now, I cried an awful lot, and even there was tears in my eyes. I actually probably won't sit through it much more. I've probably watched it 100 times at this stage, at least, and but not in the cinema with people. But it's still hard to watch. But it was, I suppose, we're both interested in film, and we're both interested in photography and everything. And I kind of feel like last September, it was just like, and it was like awful to think that nothing good had come out of it. Whereas having made the film and having discussions with people, and just we showed it in Dublin. The premiere was in Dublin in August, and there was 300 people in the audience, and the amount of letters and the amount of people, that there's healing in that. There was healing in the process of making it and watching it. And the funny thing was, I didn't see the love. It was only when I started showing it to people that people goes, oh my God, you have so much love between us. I had actually forgotten that, because I was so maybe angry as well that we couldn't have a baby, and I just forgot, that we're married and are trying to have kids and everything, and Jesus, it just must be so hard, to keep the love there. And I think that really is what the film showed me at the end of the day. I thought it would be a film about loss and about sadness, and it is, But actually, what I see now and what I'm reminded of is the amount of love that's there. So it was cathartic on a lot of levels, you know. So, thanks, Susan.
Can I ask something really silly?
Please do.
I didn't understand the yellow wallpaper. Anybody tell me?
I'm so sorry, I didn't understand the yellow wallpaper. What was it about?
You and me both.
None of us are here from the Yellow Wallpaper, so I suppose it would be a bit unfair to...
It's based on a classic, then, isn't it? It's basically a feminist classic.
Sorry, we can't answer that.
Sorry, I was going to ask you about the first film, and I was quite surprised when I saw that it had been made in 1994, because, to be honest, apart from the typing pool, it doesn't look as if there's that 20 years later that a lot of these issues are still quite live, today.
Well, I checked on Google last night, and the gender salary gap has now decreased, or in 2011 the gender salary gap had become less than 10% for the first time ever. But that's only for full-time workers. For part-time workers, of course, quite a lot of women are part-time workers, but their gender salary gap is still 20%. But still, yeah, but I take your point, yes, absolutely. There's still a long way to go, sure.
What I find really interesting, having got through the IVF thing, is like, in terms of women, in terms of our bodies and our lives, young women we're all on the pill, and we're all taking this huge amount of drugs to keep ourselves, fertile, so that we can pay our mortgage and have our jobs and all the rest of it. And so they convince us to do all these things, and then at the other end of it, when you've left it a little bit too late, they charge you thousands for IVF. So actually the cost of being a woman has radically increased, just to keep ourselves doing the stuff that we're meant to do naturally. So it's quite, I just thought it was amazingly fresh and dangerously radical, even for now, 20 years later,
If you think it's still useful, please get people to use it. We've got loads of flyers out there. Please give it to your college librarians, your local librarians, whatever, and get them to use it, because it was designed as a educational aid, really, something to start people talking, something to give people something to talk about, and try and remind people that those battles haven't all been won yet.
Precisely about that, I thought when watching the film, I thought it would be quite good to make it into a book, because I think for young women that they are going into the work environment, all the vocabulary that you handle is very spot on, and is really attacking the issues, and to have it in a book and something that you can maintain, I think it could be really good. And the visuals as well, they are very easily translated to book format as well.
You mean like a graphic novelette? Yeah, it would be great to do that. Anybody with commissioners.
I just wanted to ask about the Joy Nina film and how you kind of evolved the imagery. There's quite a lot of striking imagery with water and the cloth and stuff, and also in the airport when she changes in the toilet. That specific image, how you kind of came up with them, and did you start with some ideas, or was it the process of filming that you came up with them, or what do they mean?
I think Jane already said that I'm supposed to be an actress, so you can hear me. She said, apart from the filming we did in Nigeria, and my family really, really supported us. Supposed to go into another country, we'd have to stay in a hotel, or because all this was done without our time and money. So every day in England, when we're both free, we had the capacity, we'd go out and we'd discuss where should we go, and either let's see what happens there because the situation gives you ideas, or just discuss about the theme we're working on, you know. And the whole process was initially based on two women. We called them the woman in black, the woman in red. Maybe that wasn't obvious in the film, but obviously other women came out of that, or maybe they're just one woman in different aspects, you know. In the particular scenes you're talking about, I mean, don't forget, this was very much, we didn't write to Gatwick or Heathrow and say we like to shoot on the 24th or something. We just went to these places, and the little or the most you got out of that scene was the amount we were allowed to shoot before somebody said move on, or, you know, we have some money. So basically the Gatwick one, actually originally, that particular shot came out of something that we thought we'd just do something together and see what. We just, Jane, unbeknownst to me, entered it to a competition which we won, so we thought, oh, maybe we can do something more. Yeah.
Yes, the Gatwick specifically was a trial to see. I was sceptical that we could just go out without any permission. It's something that I tell the students never to do. And so we were the entire cast and crew, which makes it very flexible. And therefore, if a day didn't go so well, although the majority of them actually did, most of them are actually in the film, we hadn't wasted anybody else's time. And it also meant that we'd have a theme in mind for the day, and maybe some props and costume, and we'd or not. And Joy would improvise, and I would improvise on the camera, which is a way that it's hard to work if you've got other people with you, where you feel responsibility to them. You know that. So it's. And then we just had a few elements to tie everything together, like the red cloth and the doll and a few other elements. Otherwise, it could have become very. They just sewed the whole things together stylistically, as well as providing some symbolism. There's a lot of serendipity as well. The men in the hunting pink, the people in the hunting pink in the Gatwick airport, the black dog, various other things, you know, that were just there. But then when we had all this archive of stories as well. You know, they just sort of, the two come together momentarily before sliding apart again. So it was one thing at a time. We'd look at what we got, and then we'd go out and do something else, and what are we missing, etc., etc. But water was also a theme, obviously, all the way through.
But basically, it was just wanting to do something in a different way, because we wanted to tell something that we felt hadn't been highlighted in the community or in the media, which was stories of Africans still coming to the West in boats, but this time nobody caring about whether they lived or died, whereas in slavery we were quite precious. So, you know, I just thought, I am an actress, I have been in films, but I've never made a film before, and I can improvise, and, you know, Jane was quite happy to shoot whatever she saw, and then at the end of it you have this jigsaw where you can make whatever film you want out of it. But it was really just wanted to tell a story our way, and not necessarily linear, but we felt women as artists as well as, you know, whatever our roles in life.
I should say as well, when we did all our research and looking for stories of immigrants, but Lampedusa was, you know, it's in the press now, but it was hardly in the press then, they were all men's stories. And women are actually coming in larger and larger numbers, and they are actually supporting their families more and more. So which is seldom told. You seldom hear their stories. Not only do they have the most extremely awful stories on the way, all sorts of things, but there are women that come just to do jobs, you know, and they support their families and quietly do all that, and yet we just see pictures of waves and waves of young men all the time. So that was another element, what that does to them, you know, how isolated they are here, and also that sliding between cultures all the time.
I was just struck by the water, the sort of waterside imagery. The old rituals happened by the water and so on, and the old deities and what have you. It just, that was deliberate, I imagine. Yeah, that's it. It was really strong, and it was fantastic to see it happening in London and attracting all those people. Sort of like, what's going on the banks of the Thames, sort of thing.
Outside the National Theatre.
Yeah, absolutely. I really love that element.
Well, actually, we're out of time, actually. I'm really sorry we don't have any time for your questions, but thanks so much to our filmmakers for joining us. Thank you.